if they had already won. They genuinely believed their wealth, status, and flawless reputation would shield them from accountability. For months, they treated my brother's 8-year-old daughter like an invisible burden, hiding her away in a cold, dark house while pretending to be the perfect, doting guardians to the outside world. They thought I was just a bitter, dramatic troublemaker who couldn't touch them. But as the bailiff handed over the certified transcripts, their smug smiles completely vanished. Their own written statements, filled with cold calculation, contradictions, and accidental confessions, were projected on the courtroom screens for everyone to see. The judge's expression turned to pure ice as he read their words aloud. That was the exact moment my parents realized their flawless reputation couldn't save them from the truth, and their desperate scramble for control was officially over. My name is Sophia. I'm 28 years old, and for the last few years, I've worked tirelessly to build a quiet, independent life for myself here in Seattle, far away from the suffocating control of my parents. I thought distance would protect me from their toxicity, but you can never truly run away from family. It was just after midnight on a Tuesday when the storm outside was raging at its absolute peak. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, breaking the heavy silence of my apartment. When I picked it up, expecting an automated weather alert, my heart instantly dropped. It was my 8-year-old niece, Lily. Through the static of the storm and the sound of her own frantic, hyperventilating breaths, her tiny voice broke my heart. "I'm alone, starving. Please help, Auntie," she sobbed. The sheer terror in her voice was unmistakable. She was trapped in the dark, shivering from the cold, and completely abandoned. Just 3 months prior, my brother had been deployed overseas. He was a single father who trusted our parents implicitly when they eagerly volunteered to take Lily into their massive suburban estate. They put on a grand performance for him, promising to cherish and protect her like a little princess. It was all a calculated lie. Before I tell you what I found when I rushed over to their house, I love seeing how far Lily's story travels. As I threw on a rain jacket and grabbed my car keys, my mind raced thinking about my helpless little niece left to fend for herself by the very people who claimed to love her. My blood was boiling, and I knew right then that my parents' carefully constructed facade was about to come crashing down. The windshield wipers on my car couldn't clear the torrential rain fast enough as I sped toward my parents' neighborhood. The drive normally took 25 minutes, but I made it in 15, fueled by pure adrenaline and terror for my niece. When I finally pulled up the long, winding driveway of their gated estate, the entire property was dead silent. The multi-million-dollar house stood tall and imposing against the stormy sky, but every single window was completely black. I sprinted through the pouring rain to the front door and pounded on it, but there was no answer. Remembering the panic in Lily's voice, I didn't waste time waiting. I rushed around to the back of the estate, checking the doors until I found the side entrance to the guest wing unlocked. Pushing it open, I stepped into a hallway that felt as freezing as the air outside. The heating was completely turned off in this section of the house. Guided only by the flashlight on my phone, I finally found Lily shivering in the corner of a small, uncarpeted back room, wrapped in a single thin blanket. There wasn't a single scrap of food in the small kitchenette fridge, and the main house was locked from the inside, preventing her from reaching the living spaces. While my parents slept in absolute luxury, Lily had been cast aside like an afterthought. Suddenly, headlights cut through the darkness outside. My parents were finally returning home from a high society charity gala. When they walked in and saw me holding Lily, they didn't look guilty at all. Instead, my mother crossed her arms and sighed with deep irritation, instantly dismissing my fury as unnecessary family drama and unwarranted meddling in things I didn't understand. "Take your hands off her, Sophia," my father commanded, his voice dripping with an icy authority that used to make me freeze. He looked at me with utter contempt, adjusting his silk tie as if my presence was nothing more than a stain on his expensive evening. I demanded to take Lily home with me right then and there, but my mother let out a cold, mocking laugh. She told me that if I stepped out of that house with Lily, they would use their immense financial power and high-priced legal team to ruin my life, destroy my career, and ensure I was tied up in lawsuits for the next decade. They valued their public image far more than their own granddaughter's safety. To protect themselves from any potential scandal and secure formal temporary custody before my brother could catch wind of what was happening, my parents eagerly took the offensive. The very next morning, their legal team submitted lengthy, notarized statements to the family court. In those documents, they falsely painted me as an unhinged, bitter troublemaker who was trying to extort them, while describing Lily as a difficult, deeply ungrateful child who required strict, isolated discipline. Arrogant in their social status, they believed their wealth made them completely untouchable. They wrote pages upon pages, detailing exactly how they managed Lily's daily routine, fully expecting the court to rubber stamp their authority. What their expensive lawyers failed to realize, however, was that in their rush to construct a perfect narrative, my parents had just left a massive, permanent paper trail of emotional coldness and systemic neglect. I refused to let their threats intimidate me. Looking at Lily, I knew that backing down meant leaving her to be crushed by their cold arrogance, and I simply couldn't allow that to happen. The very next day, I used a significant portion of my savings to hire a dedicated, sharp family attorney named Evelyn, and we formally challenged my parents in court for emergency guardianship of Lily. When the initial legal discovery file arrived at Evelyn's office, we bypassed the aggressive letters from their corporate lawyers and focused intently on the formal written statements my parents had personally signed and submitted to the family court. They thought those words would justify their actions, but Evelyn and I spent 48 hours carefully dissecting every single sentence, looking for the cracks in their armor. That was when we found the hidden trap they had blindly walked into. Because my parents were so desperate to paint themselves as flawless, hands-on guardians, they had over-explained every detail of Lily's routine. Evelyn suddenly pointed her pen at the papers, a sharp smile spreading across her face. We had just noticed glaring, irreconcilable contradictions between my mother's and father's timelines. Worse for them, their own statements included subtle, arrogant admissions of leaving Lily completely unsupervised for extended periods in the guest wing, which they legally classified as fostering independence. They had literally documented their own pattern of isolation and neglect in black and white, thinking their wealth would make the court blind to it. We had exactly the ammunition we needed for the upcoming hearing, and my parents had no idea they had handed it to us themselves. The atmosphere inside the family courtroom was thick with tension on the morning of the emergency hearing. My parents sat confidently on their side of the polished mahogany table, dressed in bespoke designer suits that practically screamed old money and effortless influence. They looked completely relaxed, whispering and sharing smug smiles with their high-priced attorney, fully expecting the judge to favor their wealthy status over my modest apartment and single-income means. To them, this entire proceeding was just a minor, temporary inconvenience that their checkbook would easily resolve. But their confidence shattered the exact moment the presentation began. Evelyn, my attorney, didn't just read excerpts from the legal documents. She took the certified copies of my parents' signed statements and projected them side by side on the large courtroom monitors for everyone to see. Bright red digital highlights focused on the fatal flaws in their defense. The mother's timeline placed Lily at a private tutoring session at the exact same hour the father's statement proudly claimed she was safely asleep in her bed. More damningly, the text on the screen showed my mother's own calculated words describing the unheated guest wing room as separate quarters designed to minimize disruption to the main estate's evening schedule. The judge's demeanor shifted instantly from objective neutrality to visible disgust. He leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as he read their cold, dismissive remarks about an 8-year-old girl. He looked down at my parents over the bench, his expression turning to pure ice as he realized they viewed their own granddaughter as a mere prop for their public image. The absolute silence in the courtroom was deafening as the sentences they had written to destroy me were used to expose their true colors. The judge slammed his gavel down, the sharp crack echoing through the silent courtroom. Without a single moment of hesitation, he stripped my parents of all temporary custody rights right then and there, granting full emergency guardianship of Lily to me. He leaned over the bench and delivered a scathing, public reprimand, severely condemning the grandparents for attempting to use their immense wealth and high social status to mask what was clearly systemic, cruel neglect. The immediate fallout from that day was absolutely devastating for them. My parents' precious, high society reputation was completely shattered within 48 hours as the shocking details of the court transcripts leaked out to the public. The very community they had spent decades trying to impress turned their backs on them overnight. They were abruptly forced to resign from prestigious charity boards, uninvited from exclusive country clubs, and completely ostracized from their wealthy social circles. Their money couldn't buy back the respect they had lost. Best of all, 2 weeks later, my brother safely and permanently returned home from his overseas deployment. When he found out what our parents had done, he was filled with absolute fury, but tears welled in his eyes as he wrapped me in a tight hug, deeply grateful to me for stepping up and saving his daughter when she had nobody else. The bond between us was cemented forever, marking a clean, permanent break from our toxic parents and their web of lies. Fast forward a few months later, and the transformation in our lives has been nothing short of miraculous. Lily is thriving in a warm, loving, and completely stable environment, recovering her bright, beautiful smile and her lost confidence with every passing day. The haunted, fearful look in her eyes has been entirely replaced by laughter, security, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing she will never be abandoned in the dark again. Looking back, I realized that standing up against generational toxicity and wealth-fueled arrogance was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But it proved to me that the truth always outlasts a fabricated public reputation, and that true family is defined by protection and love, not power and control. What would you have done if you found your niece in that dark room? Would you have fought your own parents in court to save her? Get to click on one of the 2 incredible stories appearing on your screen right now to see how far poetic justice can truly go. Thank you for watching until the very